Okay, so I just finished the final intake port cleaning of the Touareg here. Again, it's a 2008 Volkswagen Touareg 4.2 liter V8 FSI. So I just finished cleaning the intake ports here. All in all, not too bad a job. The cleaning took me about, I would say, a day and a half or so. I started it yesterday afternoon, and now it's about, I don't know, it's about 6 o'clock right now. So about a day and a half just to do the cleaning of everything. So tools I used were some of these brushes here. These work pretty well. I bent the end over on this one here just to give me some more flexibility. A few brushes like this just help a little bit for some of the more awkward areas. A little flat bladed screwdriver. Use that to kind of scrape the back side of the valve. The back of the valve itself was the toughest part to clean because it was really caked on there and really baked on as well. So it was very hard. The majority of it was just kind of like an oily film, so it wasn't too bad. But anyways, so that's some of the stuff I used. Toothbrush as well. Vacuum cleaner with a piece of hose taped on the end of it here just to suck up the cleaning fluids that I was using. Again, another one of those brushes stuck into a cordless drill. That works actually really well just to spin the brush to do the cleaning. A couple more things, this little suction ball thing to draw out some of the fluid so I didn't have to put everything through the vacuum. A couple of these brushes here, metal brushes. Again, some more toothbrushes, a little pick, things like that. So as far as cleaning fluids or chemicals, I was using some carb cleaner here. This stuff didn't seem to work as well as the MotoMaster stuff. Actually, I'll find the can. I think it's in the garbage now. Yeah, this stuff here, I know it's a little bit awkward with the flash on, but this stuff here seemed to work pretty well for actually helping to break down some of the carbon. You can actually see it when you sprayed it. It would start bubbling a little bit and fizzing. So anyways, there's that. And I also used a little bit of brake cleaner. This seemed to work pretty well. Let me get the English side. This seemed to work pretty well for removing the varnish more so than anything else. It didn't really do that good on the carbon, but it did seem to work pretty well on cleaning up the varnish as brake cleaner does. So anyways, here's the kind of the finished product. And you can see down in there. So there's still some carbon primarily down at the bottom. It's a little bit hard to see, but in behind the valves, towards the top of the camera, that side of the valve, a little bit hard to get at. I didn't really have that many brushes, so there's still a little bit of carbon buildup behind there. But I think for the most part, I was able to get it pretty clean. And if you look at the last video, you'll see the difference. Like, it's night and day, even right now, and I wouldn't say these are perfectly clean. I'd say I probably got about 95% of the carbon off of there, like I say, there's still a little bit on the back side of the valves that you can see on there. It's a little bit hard to get off. Like, as I say, it was baked on there pretty good, so it's hard to scrape off. But yeah, so that's what that's looking like. I'd say this here is probably one of the worst valves still, but without getting too carried away on the cleaning and scraping and that, that's what they look like. So the procedure that I used was to initially I just pulled the flaps out. Actually, these are what the flaps or tumblers, whatever you want to call them, are. So I pulled these out first, and I started, I cleaned these separately. I just left them out here. I sprayed them down, scraped them off. These are pretty straightforward to clean. But as far as cleaning the valve out, what I did anyways was I pulled that flap out first, and then I taped off whatever ports were still open to the engine, because obviously you have to make sure that the valve is closed all the way before you start pouring chemicals and scraping carbon into it. But so tape them off, pull the flaps out, and then I just filled them up with a combination of the carb cleaner that I showed you, as well as some gasoline. It was actually pre-mixed gasoline for a two-stroke engine, but just straight gasoline would probably work pretty well on this too, and just let it soak in there. So I filled the port up pretty much to the top. I'd fill it up to about there or so, pretty well right up to this bottom edge here, and just let it soak for hour or two, maybe even 3 hours. And that seemed to do a pretty decent job of loosening up the carbon. If you try and scrape it off without loosening it up with some sort of chemical, it's pretty tough. It's pretty hard to get off. But after loosening it up with the gasoline for, like I say, a couple hours, that did a pretty good job of softening it to the point that you could use that the drill on the brush that I showed you here And that did a really good job of taking off, I'd say probably 80% of the carbon. After that, I just sucked it out using the little suction tool and a vacuum to get most of it out. And then I went back at it, sprayed it down some more with some carb cleaner and of course some brake cleaner as well in there. And just basically kept kind of rinsing it down, scrubbing it, let it soak, and vacuuming it out and repeat. Do that process, I don't know, probably 3-4 times, and that seemed to work pretty well for me. So the back of the valves, as I said, were pretty crusty. It was pretty hard. It was actually pretty difficult to get it off. It was very brittle. So what I had to do was take the little screwdriver, like this one here, and just kind of go at it and scrape off the back side of the valve down there. I don't know if you can see or not. But basically scrape the back side of the valve with that, break it loose, and then use some compressed air in the vacuum to kind of blow it out of the corners or the edges of the valve seat and the valve, and suck it up with the vacuum cleaner. So anyways, if you check out my first video that I posted on this, you'll see the difference. I mean, it's absolutely night and day how clean this is compared to what it was. So I'm pretty comfortable with this. I'm actually just starting to put it back together now. I mean, you can be obviously a lot more fussy than I am as far as cleaning, but it's one of those things where it's just going to get gummed up anyway, so getting too carried away with it I don't think is really necessary. I also took some time to pull the intake manifold apart. It's a little bit of a it's tricky to pull it apart. There's a lot of silicone sealing it. This one has the variable intake runners on it, so you have your low speed long tracked and then your high speed short tracked. But it's a bit of a challenge to get it apart because it's basically all silicone together. I may post some pictures of what that looks like, but it's a lot of work to get it apart. You kind of have to work your way around it and just very gently pry the two halves apart to separate it. Now, I don't know that you necessarily need to separate it or that you even really need to clean it at all, but I just wanted to clean out the tumblers or tumbler flaps, whatever you want to call them. There's pieces that run along each of the valves here and basically are designed to block off, you know, the top half, I believe it's the top half of the intake port. And then at high speed it opens, so it's for low speed torque improvement. And then there's also the other set of valves which closes off the long intake runners for high-speed operation, again to improve low-speed torque. But anyways, that stuff there didn't seem too dirty. I would say probably 90% of the carbon and the crap was right here in the intake port and on the back of the valve. And you can even see, I don't know if you can really tell, but the inside here, where the air was kind of just not really touching all that much, was pretty clean. Like when I started cleaning this here, I noticed that this side here of the port was pretty clean. It was this side here, the outside. You know, you can imagine the air is coming in like this and hitting kind of at an angle like that and then being forced into the cylinder. So that's the side that was mostly caked with carbon. This back side here was actually pretty clean. There was very little carbon towards the top. As you get towards the bottom, it obviously got worse. But you know, the top here, this was not too bad. And you kind of notice that same trend with the intake manifold as well, is on that outer edge where the air was kind of being forced to make a sharp turn into the engine, or a gradual turn, I guess. And that's where you notice the majority of the buildup. So the intake manifold wasn't too bad. You probably don't really need to worry about it. It was just one of those things where I had it apart and I didn't want to clean it while it was assembled because of the potential of dropping something in there, or you know, breaking off a piece of carbon that gets stuck and then you drop it in, can't get it out, gets sucked into your engine, that sort of thing. But so all in all, not really a super difficult process, but fairly time consuming. There's a lot of time spent just waiting for the carbon to start softening up. And so if you're going to do this, I would say start it on a Friday night or Saturday morning like I did, and you know, give yourself 2 days, maybe even 3 days to do it. These intake manifold gaskets here that I pulled off, I'll show you what they look like. So I did have to clean these up. I just cleaned them off with WD-40, so some sort of oil or lubricant should do a pretty decent job of cleaning them off. I didn't want to use any brake parts cleaner or carb cleaner on them because I wasn't sure how compatible they are with this rubber or whatever it is. So anyways, I scrubbed these down with a toothbrush and I clean them, and I'm just going to attempt to reuse them. I'm not sure if they're going to seal or not, but if you look along this edge here, you can see the orange section, and you can see that thick right in the middle of the screen. You can see where the orange is, how thick it is, and then you see that thicker section of metal in behind it. I'm thinking these have just barely enough compression left in them that they'll probably seal properly. Not that I'm recommending you reuse these, because of course you would hate to have to pull everything apart again to replace these if they are leaking, but I would say I'm thinking I will probably get away with it. So I'm going to have a go and just put them back in after I've cleaned them all up here. They look to be in pretty good shape. There's only one small tear. Where is it now? One small tear right there. You can see where the silicone is on the orange right here. That's the only spot that was really torn. It's just a very small tear, so I just put a little bit of RTV silicone in there, and hopefully that'll seal it up. So I'm gonna have a go at just reusing these, and hopefully it doesn't leak. I mean, worst case scenario, I just have to pull it out and replace these. It's not exactly easy to get the manifold out, but at $35, $40 a piece, I'm not recommending that you reuse them. Certainly, if I'd planned this a bit better, I would have ordered them in advance. Just one of these things where I'm working on it on a weekend and I can't get the parts for a few days, and I want to get this back together and out of the shop. So I'm thinking that in some cases you may be able to reuse these. I'm hoping that I am one of those cases where I will get away with it. But in general, I'd probably recommend just buying some new intake manifold gaskets. The rest of the process doesn't seem too bad. You can see that there's not a whole lot of stuff that really comes out here. You know, you got your cover, your two covers there. That's a coolant line. Some more, what is it? Sorry, crankcase vent tubes and the fuel pump, or the fuel block here. Other than that, there's really not a whole lot of stuff that comes out. I was able to get the intake manifold out, as you can see, leaving that back pipe in there. I don't think I even needed to take those flex tubes off, the accordion pipes, but I did anyways. So there's really not a whole lot of stuff that has to come out. It's just somewhat time consuming because there's so little space to work. But other than that, I mean, you know, probably the biggest part of this job is getting the intake manifold out. But once it's out, you know, the cleaning process, it's relatively straightforward. It's just a matter of taking your time and, you know, working your way through it. So thanks for watching.